Welcome back. It's the Watching Network Africa, and congratulations are in order for President Edgar Lungu of Zambia as he formally continues in office today, having been sworn in by the country's courts. The president began his day with a Bible verse which he shared on Twitter, quoting from Psalm 118, verse 14. In his inaugural speech, the president promised to fight corruption, as engaging in corruption cannot equal the pride that comes from achievement through hard work. His words. He also addressed political opponents whom he congratulated for a good run, and says that what unites Zambians is much greater than what seeks to divide them. President Lungu later performed the customary release of doves and balloons. The ceremony was attended by leaders of Uganda, Tanzania and Botswana, among other dignitaries. Well, today's been declared a public holiday because of the inauguration. The VOA's Anita Powell was monitoring the inauguration for us. She joins us now from Johannesburg, South Africa. Anita, great to have you join us again on Network Africa.
Thank you so much.
Apart from tackling corruption, what are the promises that President Edgar Lungu made to the people of Zambia?
Well, he actually spoke at length in this inaugural address. He spoke for just over 40 minutes, and some of the things he discussed were how Zambia is going to diversify its energy portfolio, how they're going to improve manufacturing and industrialization, how they're going to work on things like road safety, and how he's going to launch an inquiry to move ahead after the worrying post-election and pre-election violence that we saw just around this election. So he made a number of really diverse promises.
And there was a point where he did address the opposition. Were there any of the leaders at the swearing in?
Well, there were some opposition leaders in the crowd, yes. And they were members of other opposition parties, not the main opposition, the United Democratic, I just lost it, but the party run by Hakainde Hichilema. They were not there in force, but other opposition leaders were there, and he addressed them and said it's time to come together and work together. So he was conciliatory to the opposition.
From what you've observed, Anita, are there people of Zambia filled with hope for the new government?
So that's a really big question. I think it's too soon to tell. And what it all hinges on is the economy. This is the main issue in this election. If Edgar Lungu comes through and improves the economy, strengthens the Kwacha, delivers on all the promises he's made, I think they will have hope. But right now, it's just too soon to tell.
But there does seem to be the message of anti-corruption, going across all of Africa. President Lungu had one of his counterparts there, Tanzanian President John Magufuli, who's also been talking about fighting corruption in his inaugural speech. So was there some camaraderie amongst him and these leaders?
Well, you know what I think is interesting is that you do mention the Tanzanian president, yes, but the star, if I may say so, of this inauguration event was Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, who does not maybe have the most shining reputation in terms of corruption. And he spoke at length about how today was a victory for Zambia, how democracy is the only way forward. And many critics of Mr. Mugabe might say that his actions undermine those words. So it's great that President Lungu is talking about corruption, that he's talking about democracy, but perhaps some of his words might be undermined by the company that he's chosen to keep.
Anita Powell, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. A group of 30 women have been a source of worry for the Ugandan government as police try to disperse the group on their way to Parliament to protest against a bill seeking to amend the constitution to remove age limits for judges currently at 75. Their concern is that if lawmakers remove the age limit, then there could eventually be a limit to how old is too old to become president. Current President Yoweri Museveni is 72 years old, but he's been in power for 30 years. However, he would not be allowed to run for office. A sixth term it would be in 2021 if lawmakers go through with the bill. The women say they're wearing white in the protest to signify the peaceful nature of their protest. But police are, however, having none of that. They bundled all of them into a truck before taking them away. African leaders have begun arriving in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, for an extraordinary meeting of the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. That's the first regional summit of African heads of state to be held in Somalia since IGAD was founded 30 years ago. Somalia has never been a venue, and that's quite interesting because it's been in conflict for years and most recently has been hit by Al-Shabaab insurgency. Uganda, Ethiopia and Kenya, who are IGAD members, provide majority troops for the African Union mission in Somalia, which supports the government in its attempt to combat Al-Shabaab militants. Security concerns were raised ahead of the meeting, especially as the militants had recently carried out deadly attacks in the capital as a result of the summit. Many roads in the capital are closed. IGAD members, of course, comprise of countries from the Horn of Africa. We're talking Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia and Eritrea. The Nile Valley, that's Sudan and South Sudan, and the African Great Lakes region, where you have Kenya and Uganda. It is the second day of Eid in Nigeria, and the rams have already been shared by Muslims to family, friends and neighbors. This is despite our economic reality that we're in recession and the rising cost of goods and services every time there are festivities. But for other African countries such as Senegal, it is the demand of sheep that is high. Livestock traders are, however, recording good profits and are using mobile money to make shopping for the season a lot easier.
Sheep are a hot commodity in Senegal leading up to the Muslim holiday Eid el-Kabir, or Tabaski as it's known in the country, when each family traditionally slaughters a ram for a feast that has become a boom time for traders who often travel hundreds of miles to sell their livestock. In the capital, Dakar, sheep are taken to the beach for washing, a task that involves scrubbing them down from top to bottom with sand. They are then dragged into the water to be rinsed off before being taken to the market for selling. Although the tradition of slaughtering a sheep stretches back centuries, these days paying for the sacrifice is a whole lot easier and safer than it used to be, thanks to mobile money.
We have partnership with Orange Money, where Orange chooses purebred sheep that will be advertised to the Senegalese public. With Orange Money, you can make money transfers. So for more security, you can buy sheep through these transactions. The buyer has an account, the seller has an account, and instead of coming with cash, people prefer to buy their sheep with Orange Money.
Orange launched its version known as Orange Money in Ivory Coast in 2008, and now it has over 18 million users in Africa. The scheme by the French telecoms giants enables traders to accept cashless payments using mobile money services, bypassing the need for a bank. First launched in Kenya in 2007, mobile money services is being rolled out across Africa, catering to millions of people who lack affordable bank accounts. The government estimates that 700,000 sheep will be needed this year in Senegal, which has more than 90% Muslims. There are not enough available domestically, so traders come from neighbors Mali and Mauritania to supply more. Buyers navigating crowded sheep pens with wads of cash often find their earnings pickpocketed. So to avoid this, some sellers have partnered with Orange, allowing customers to complete the transaction on mobile phones.
You know, here there are pickpockets and thieves and aggressors. So for more security, people prefer to put their money in Orange Money accounts.
As with all commodities that shoot up in price because of a predictable surge in demand, the sheep attract speculators. That is despite Senegalese government's efforts to clamp down on them.
Still ahead on Network Africa, nurse Pauline Kafiki is declared of being dishonest in her handling of the Ebola virus. Just stay with us.